Ready to drive your career, not just ride along? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm Simone E. Morris, your host and career strategist, here to give you the roadmap. Each week, we're cutting through the noise with strategies, stories, and insights to get you back in control. Your career clarity starts right here. Welcome to this week's episode of the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. I'm your host, Simone E. Morris, and we're here today to empower you to navigate your professional journey with purpose and confidence, all while being in the driver's seat for your career. I'm thrilled to introduce our guests for this week. Our guest is Dr. Cree Scott, who is the founder and CEO of Serenity. With 15 years of experience as a consulting psychologist and executive coach, Dr. Scott is an expert in human-centered leadership development, change management, and employee well-being. Her unique insights and background, including a doctorate in psychology and an MBA, make her the perfect guide to truly owning your career. Let's get right into today's show. Cree, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, tell us a little bit about your work and what you're currently doing today.
Sure. Yeah. So I have been the CEO and founder of my own boutique consulting firm called Serenity Psy Consulting, and I've been doing that for a little over 3 years. And it is focused on leadership development for all leaders in different parts of walks of their life, as well as executive coaching and team building. So I have really enjoyed the aspects of working with leaders and helping them find their way in terms of their goals and successes and things that they like to do to become the leader that they yearn for.
Mm. And how exactly did you find yourself into entrepreneurship? Just, as you think about your career journey, how did you land there 3 years ago?
Oh my goodness, where do I even start? I think not on purpose. So I was at my former employer and I had been working and building my career there, which was lovely, and I really enjoyed my time there for the most part. And I feel like I learned a lot there as well.
Hmm.
And even with that still being the case, I do feel like I kind of lost myself in a moment towards the end there, in terms of just the higher you go in any organization, the less you get to stay close to the actual work, and the more you get into the politics of things, and I think the more you get into managing people, which I don't mind managing people. That part wasn't the thing, but you just don't get to do the work itself. And I was at a point in my career where I could continue to go up the corporate ladder, stay where I was, or just, figure out something else. And I kind of felt like I needed to get out of my current way of living and kind of give myself a jolt, if you will,
Mm.
to to jumpstart something different. And I wasn't sure what different meant. So I was going to take a sabbatical, but I think for me, a sabbatical would have been like how people feel on Sundays when they have to go back to work. And my concern was that I didn't want my sabbatical to be a month of Sundays or 3 months of Sundays. And so I decided to resign, which I was even surprised by myself, and definitely my husband. But we were in a financial situation where I could do that. And the goal was for me to find myself and to figure out, like, what do you want to do with your career, with your life, with this next part? I guess some people could call it a midlife crisis, since I'm almost 50, not quite there yet. Um, but I don't necessarily think it was a midlife crisis. I think it was just a moment of, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I'm working my butt off, and I'm not sure why I'm working my butt off or for what I'm working my butt off towards. I feel tired, I feel exhausted, and I don't feel fulfilled. Um,
Mm.
so that's where I was in my mind state. at the time anyway. And so taking that time off, I just felt like I deserved to give myself that. And I had made a promise to myself, wow, like I don't know, several years prior when I got breast cancer, that if I ever felt bad or not well in that space every single day, that I would check in and take care of myself. So that was just me keeping a promise to myself to not let it get so bad. And so I did. And during that time, I I think I quickly realized that I love doing the work and that I want to be in charge of doing the work,
Mm.
which naturally led me to entrepreneurship. With If you would have asked me that while I was at my current employer, I would have been like, no, I don't want to go start your business. Like that seems like a lot of work. And actually, a lot of my, other friends slash colleagues who had done that, I used to always think like, oh my gosh, like, do you ever get a break? But, as I was just kind of thinking about it and journaling and meditating on it and being quiet and sometimes even being bored after a few weeks, I just decided that I was going to give it a try. And so that's really how it came about. No business plan, no huge epiphanies of, like, oh, I'm going to be a business owner. But it was just like, hey, I'm going to give this a try. I'm big on experimentation. And so that's kind of how I saw this entrepreneurial life coming into fold was let's try it.
I love that story. And by the way, you just dropped the nugget about breast cancer in there. I would be remiss if I didn't touch upon, pause and acknowledge that I heard that because I imagine that that's quite an impact, even before thinking about a life pivot, a sabbatical. That's a big impact. Health can cause a
Yes.
big impact on your career. So let's go back there for a moment and just tell me how you managed to stay successful or how you dealt with having breast cancer and also navigating the workplace.
Yeah, I will tell you probably not well. I don't want anyone to think I was a model for navigating health at that time anyway. And so when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I had been at my employer for maybe like 2 or 3 years at that point, maybe 3 years. It actually maybe 4 years actually, because I had my daughter. So my daughter was 2 when I got diagnosed. So I think I was about 3 or 4 years into the organization. And I just remember kind of thinking to myself that it was not my life. Like it was like I was living someone else's life because I was in my mid 30s, and who gets breast cancer at that age? And I also remember just thinking like I want, to just forget it and have a normal life. So I scheduled a bilateral mastectomy and took 6 weeks off, but returned back to work during chemo. So I will say that I am not the model person that should have actually taken some more time off and really allowed myself to fully heal. I think mentally and physically. But I think that what that did for me is over the course of maybe a year or so of just not being the model person and really like having a lot of mental, what I consider to be not necessarily breakdowns, but just like crises, if you will, like many mental crises and a lot of surgeries and a lot of physical things happening over the course of a few years. I finally got to a path of spirituality. And I think that since then, that is the path that I have been on. It took me way longer than it should have, I think, but I'm giving myself grace and compassion because I recognize that everybody's journey is different.
Hmm.
But it did take me like a couple of years to like recognize that I was living a life for other people or a life that I had convinced myself that I needed to lead in order to get this way of living. And I had to really like pay attention and get closer to my own spirituality in order for me to heal completely inside and out. from not just cancer, but from just all of the ruminating thoughts that I was having around cancer, mortality, and all of those things that you get when you're facing a life, a major life moment. Um, so I think for me, that's when I made a pact with myself that if I ever find that I am back there, which, that was pre-spirituality, my spiritual path, that I would do something about it, right? Like, and so when I decided to leave my employer, I wasn't quite there, but I felt like I was going to get there. And I did not want to return to that because to me, once I, was on that spiritual journey, I needed to stick with it. And I feel like that was the best decision. And it has turned out to be a phenomenal way of living for me to be a business owner and to be able to do things that are fully aligned to my values, my purpose, my being, my soul, like that, all of that. And to be able to show up better for the people around me. Like
Mm.
that's the part that I love most about this is just, I'm just, I'm just calmer, I'm more focused, I'm more centered. And I get downtime when I need it because I decide. And it's just been phenomenal.
I love that. So, I'm not sure if I've ever said this to you, but I took a sabbatical from work so I
Okay.
can understand the desire to do something different or to be more fulfilled. And I appreciate you sharing that and also your backstory with us. Tell me, Cree, this show is about being in the driver's seat for your career. So when, and being in the driver's seat means taking ownership of your career and being tied to the outcomes, being very involved and, maybe as you say, around your values, being in alignment with your values. So when did you realize you were in the driver's seat for your career?
That's a great question. I think when I switched so I'm a clinical psychologist by trade.
Mhm.
And so I went from being a clinical psychologist and being in the clinician seat to consulting overnight. So I will tell you that when I was moving from being a clinician into being a consultant, so my first role was at Booz Allen Hamilton, and I remember thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I want to learn. And so, in that mindset of learning, I felt like I was taking some level of control of my career because I was no longer attached to the identity of Dr. Cree Scott, the psychologist, but I was open to a new identity or an evolved identity of something else. And so that was probably the first time where I was just like, okay, I'm going to own this and I am going to see where this goes. But again, I'm always about experimentation because I never want to be too attached to any outcome that I can't receive what I need from the universe. So I
Mhm.
learned a lot at Booz Allen. And so when I went to Deloitte, it was me coming into a space where I was like, okay, I'm going to try to see what this looks like, but I need to do it on my own terms. So I did client service for maybe a year or two at Deloitte. I was in client service the whole time at Booz Allen. But when I went into my time at Deloitte, I was very focused on, hey, I want to build something here, but I need it to be on my own terms. And I don't want it to look like something that everyone else looks like. So I'm on this specialist path there and trying to figure out like what's next. And so I tried a few different things, but what really landed for me was leadership development. And I will
Mhm.
tell you, it took me about 6 to 8 months to actually get on the team. But I was so big on owning that career of being in leadership development that I was like, okay, what do I need to do? So I talked to people, I did all the things, and I finally got there. So that's probably the very first time that I was just like, okay, I am in the driver's seat here.
I love that story. By the way, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
Huh. I wanted to be a veterinarian. Oh my gosh.
Oh.
Actually, it was like two different things. I was like, I want to be a writer or a journalist or something like that. And I want to be a veterinarian, which are two different paths. And so who would have thought that I get to do the writing thing, but the veterinarian, I guess I'll just play with dogs at this
Ah,
point.
well, and maybe it'll come back.
Maybe hopefully I have another a part three to my career, maybe. Who
Yeah.
knows?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome. All right. Well, so based on what you have learned in these different organizations and as an entrepreneur, what would you say have been the key ingredients to taking ownership successfully of your career?
Well, it's very interesting, and I don't know if I in particular am like the model for this because I my husband describes me as a free spirit, and so not everyone can probably take some of the risks that I have taken and feel comfortable with it. But I am, I guess, an adventure seeker of sorts, an adventure seeker of experiences. So for me, it's really about how I feel, which doesn't always follow logic. But I do know that one thing that you always need to do is set a vision or a purpose first, because that's how you navigate.
Mhm.
And for me, that is the number one thing that anyone should do. So even though I am a free spirit in getting to the purpose or the vision, there is a North Star. I'm not wandering aimlessly, even though to other people it could very well feel that way or seem that way. So I think it's based on how you show up and what's important to you, but you should always have a purpose or a vision or a North Star in terms of where you want to go. And how you get there can look completely different than it did for me or for the next person. But without that, you will, I personally believe that you are wandering, in the dark without any light. And so for me, I always needed that vision and that North Star. And then once you do that, it's really around making small, tiny decisions each and every day towards getting there. It's not this big, master plan. It doesn't. And if you do that, what I feel in particular for me, when I was doing that in my past, when things didn't go as planned, there was huge letdowns and huge emotional, moments that I don't even know. It just didn't make it does now that I look back on it, it's just like, wow, that didn't even make sense. But in the moment I was feeling it. And those turned out not to even be important, right? Like not in the grand scheme of life. And so what I've learned through, looking back and the wisdom that I have grown to be into today is that you make these small, tiny decisions, but it's okay that if it doesn't work out because you can pivot at any given time and not holding yourself so accountable for making a mistake, learning from your mistakes, but not beating yourself up over those mistakes because those give you information also. And it just helps you to just move in a way that still gets you to where you want to go. But I have learned and learned from a lot of people and gotten so many great experiences from even the mistakes that I've made or even from some of the things that I tried and didn't love, but it helped me to get closer to my purpose.
I love that, your North Star. So tell us then, you have invested quite a bit in education. Tell us how education has influenced your career.
That's a really great question. And if I can just be completely honest, I feel like it's helped me get into doors and that might have been closed otherwise. And so I can't say for sure, like, these are the things that we feel on the inside, but I don't have like a true like cause and effect to prove it. But my hypothesis is that my doctorate degree has given me some level of credibility to get into places that maybe I would have not otherwise been able to enter into. So I do understand that about the degree, but also I wouldn't trade this degree in for anything in the world because I do think that it has helped me to also understand the what's most important in life, and that is people and humans and relationships and how people work and the human dynamics that are at play. And it's helped me to really navigate relationships in a way that turns out to be very meaningful. But I'm also able to just meet people with empathy and understanding. And I don't necessarily think I would have been able to do that had I not gone through years of understanding, people and having to like really uncover some of the most complex beings, on this earth. And so for me, I do think that my degree and the education that I have gotten has played a great role in not just giving me, the tools and the credibility, but also in helping me understand others so that I can help others even better than what I would have been able to do without it.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. There's some education that I really think is impactful. For example, the PMP. That's one of the things that I pursued, and I don't do a lot of project management like I used to in the past, but I will say that's one of those skill sets that you always tap into because most of life is a project of one thing or the other, and I have found that to be useful. I believe you also have do you also have, so you know the rigor
Do.
that goes into that.
Yes, and not only that, I mean, that's all consulting really is a big project manage thing, if you will. So you get these little things to do and you need to manage through them. And
That's
that's,
right.
that's important in consulting. So yeah, absolutely. It has come in handy, but I use it in all parts of life anyway. So it's been
Exactly,
very helpful.
exactly. Well, you earlier in our interview talked about risk and that you have a healthy appetite for risk. So there are some because I know when I was exiting corporate, it was a long time coming. I had taken a 3 month sabbatical to gather my thoughts, gather my courage, get some coaching before I took the big leap. And so,
Yeah.
it was a lot of work. So I wonder because you say that you have this appetite or you a curiosity around experiences. Talk to the listener out there who is just afraid of taking a risk, betting on themselves in their career. What would your answer be? What would you say to them, Cree?
Yeah. So, okay. So I personally, again, and I keep prefacing this because this is my journey. And so I never want people to feel bad about where they are in theirs. But I do have a healthy appetite for risk, not because I'm betting on myself. I do bet on myself. I do think that, I have what it takes to do a lot of different things, and I'm pretty confident in myself most of the time. However, I'm taking a risk because I am betting on the fact that the universe has my back always and that God is always going to come in and rescue me from myself even sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's the risk that I'm taking, but it doesn't feel risky if that makes any sense whatsoever. So I do all of these things and I make all of these decisions, but I understand that I'm not doing this alone, and I understand that no matter what, I can always fall back on just my faith. And I don't do anything without faith. I don't make any decisions without hope, without just knowing that there are limitless, opportunities for me in this world, even things that I can't even imagine. And so my brain doesn't go to the worst case scenario. My brain goes to like, what are all the opportunities that could happen, all of these different outcomes. And I just go with that. Like, and it doesn't always, if I look back on my life, it hasn't been a bunch of tragedies. It's just been a bunch of experiences that I love and that has made me uniquely me. So when I talk about risk, it doesn't feel risky. It's just stepping out on faith, which I think to a lot of people feels risky.
Mm, mm. Perspective. Yeah, it's such an interesting perspective about leaning into your faith. Now, tell me, if you were to come up with a title for your career body of work to date, what would the title of that book be?
Ooh, the wandering soul, probably.
Ah, The Wandering.
Colon,
So
full
tell
of
us
life
more.
experiences.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness. I've had a very fruitful life. I'll just say that. I have definitely seen tragedy, but I've seen some great joys and I've seen some great moments, some great triumphs as well. But I mean, I had my Series 63 and my Series 7. Like I was like trading at Fidelity, like when I was in undergrad. Like when I
I'm
tell you
learning
that
so
I am
much
a
about you
wandering.
today. There's these little things that just keep coming out like, oh, really? Thank you for
I am
sharing. That's
truly
awesome.
a wandering soul. I am a wandering soul. I am a soul living a human experience for sure. During graduate school, I used to braid hair. I used to do hair. I used to do
Nice.
all kinds of things to get through. I was also in a band. I was a lead singer in a band. I am a wandering soul. I am full of experiences, and I may not do them for very long, or they may be a season for whatever I'm in, but I've tried a lot of different things. And so I just feel like I've lived a full life. So that's why I think it's a wondering soul because I'm just like, yeah, what's next? Like even in my current business, I still do a lot of different things. Like one of the things that I did most recently was in strategy. Well, that's not in my title, but I know how to do strategy work.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not afraid to say yes to things. I'm also not afraid to try different things because, again, I really want to live life to the fullest. And especially after breast cancer and knowing that mortality is a real thing, even if we're not thinking about it every single day, like I'm
Absolutely.
saying yes to the adventures of life, and I just want to live it and not be afraid to take a risk again, not risky, but just to take a step out on faith to try these things so that I can learn more about myself and learn more about things that I don't know about. So that's why I would call it that.
Well, it felt like there were like three titles in there, but okay. We'll go with that one because Step Out on Faith was another one. There were a couple titles in there, to be honest, Cree. But anyway,
Thank you.
so let me ask you, the place that you sit in, and I don't mean physically, but the place where you are right now sounds like there's been a lot of wisdom through all these experiences that you've had on this journey. What resources have been game changing or helpful to you in leveling up in your career?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. So I read a lot. I'm sorry. My daughter would say I don't read at all because I listen to Audible, but that's how I find time. So I do listen to a lot of books on Audible, and just like you, reading is fundamental. I know they say that, but it truly, truly is. And there's so much content and so much great thought leadership in these books that I've been reading, whether it's, a book from Dory Clark on how to diversify yourself, or
Mm.
a book from Michael
Yeah,
Singer
reinventing
on,
you.
yes, Reinventing You. Yeah, I love that book. Or if it's, something from Michael Singer or Gary Zukav or, just the people who kind of help you think about possibilities in faith in different ways. Wayne Dyer. So I read a lot, a lot, a lot, or listen to books a lot. But I also talk to people. So I am an extrovert. And so I am the person that is going to put a virtual tea on your calendar, and I'm just gonna pop up on there if you allow me to, and we're just gonna talk. And I
Mhm.
have gained so much wisdom from people who have just already done it and have experienced their own lives in different ways, and entrepreneurship or just being a mom or being a wife or being a daughter or a sister. I'm all of those identities, and I talk to people who also live those identities, and I learn from them, and I learn and I listen, and I learn from my daughter who is 12 years old but has a lot of wisdom to impart. She teaches me how to be a better person also.
Mhm.
So I am really a connector of humans, and I really do feel like that um, people have taught me so much. Even the person that is unassuming, right? Like you just start to like learn from people. And I love those relationships. And I don't go in thinking like, oh, what can I learn from you? And maybe I do, maybe I have that in the background, but I'm just a curious person. And I
Mhm.
always want to hear people's stories. And I want to hear like what they learned from them and what they got out of them. And I just feel like sometimes that's just God talking to me in human form. So that's how I go about learning, and those are the resources. So I talk to people who have been on a path that I'm on, but also who have already gotten to the other side of where I think I want to go. And I just learn.
Yeah. Sounds like you would be a good host for the power of owning. Because it's that curiosity that has me having conversations with people about their leadership journey and what their give back is or what lessons that could they share with our audience. And it has indeed been a pleasure to have you on the show with us today. Tell our listeners how they can stay connected with you if they'd like to do so, Cree.
Yeah, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn under Cree Scott, Dr. Cree Scott. I don't know if doctor is in front of it, but Cree Scott. You can find me on LinkedIn. I run my own social media right now. I don't have anyone doing it, and you can DM me if you want to
Okay.
talk or connect. I love connecting with people there. I have a website also. It's www.serenity Psy Health, so psyhealth.com. And so those are the two places you can find me. But I love connecting to humans, so please feel free to connect anytime.
Awesome. And I will tell you that listeners do connect because I've had guests come on the show and say, I like this episode that you had. And I reached out to the guest. And so the connections do happen. And I'm a introvert. So my preferred style is introvert. But I've learned a lot from these virtual teas. In fact, I had a virtual tea with Dr. Cree. So
That's
thank
true.
you so much for being a guest on the Power of Owning Your Career podcast.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Simone. It has been wonderful, a very wonderful conversation. So thank you.
Absolutely. I learned so much about you as well. And I'm sure our listeners will learn and gain some insights from you as well.
I sure hope so.
That's it for today's empowering episode. I'm Simone E. Morris, and I want you to remember that you are indeed the architect of your career. Share this episode if it sparked something in you. Subscribe wherever you listen and find more resources at SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org. Keep practicing career ownership, and I'll be right here with you next week for more transformation.